Maya
I'm sorry,
Johnson
it won't
stood
happen again.
frozen, her apron clutched
No,
in trembling
you're
hands.
fired.
Rick Dawson, the manager, loomed over her, his face twisted with contempt, as a dozen customers and staff members watched in uncomfortable silence. "You're done here," Rick spat, his voice echoing through the suddenly quiet diner. "Pack your things and get out, now." Maya's eyes brimmed with tears. "Rick, please, I can explain why I was late. There was an elderly man who needed—" "I don't care about your excuses," Rick interrupted, his finger jabbing toward the door. "You've been nothing but a problem since day one. Lazy, unreliable, irresponsible. We don't need people like you here." The words cut through Maya like shards of glass. She'd worked at this cafe for 3 years, covering shifts for sick coworkers, staying late without complaint, treating every customer like family. Now, in front of everyone she'd served and worked alongside, she was being discarded like trash. "Please," Maya whispered, tears now streaming down her face. "I need this job. My rent is due next week, and I should have thought about that before showing up late soaked like a drowned rat," Rick said coldly. "Get out. Don't make me call security." Maya's shoulders shook as she untied her apron with fumbling fingers. She could feel the weight of every stare, every pitying glance, every whispered word. Lena Rodriguez, the cook, reached out as if to comfort her, but Maya shook her head. She couldn't bear anyone's kindness right now. She just needed to escape. She stumbled toward the door, vision blurred by tears, and pushed out into the gray morning drizzle. Across the street, inside a sleek black luxury car, an elderly man with silver hair and sharp eyes watched the entire scene unfold. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. After a long moment, he reached for his phone. "I need you to arrange a meeting," Arthur Bellamy said, quietly into the receiver. "Today. I want to know everything about that manager." Before we continue with Maya's story, if you're enjoying this journey, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us create more inspiring stories like this one. Now, let's rewind 24 hours to see how Maya's act of kindness set everything in motion. 24 hours earlier, Maya had been walking home after her evening shift, her feet aching and her pockets nearly empty. She'd counted her tips 3 times, hoping the numbers would somehow change, but they remained stubbornly insufficient. $43, not even enough to cover the electric bill, let alone the looming rent payment. The sky had opened up without warning, transforming the drizzle into a torrential downpour. Maya pulled her thin jacket tighter, knowing it was useless against the onslaught, but doing it anyway. That's when she saw him. An elderly man stood beside a broken-down Mercedes, one hand gripping the open hood, the other pressed against his chest. Even from a distance, Maya could see he was struggling, disoriented, possibly in distress. Several cars had slowed, their occupants peering out before accelerating away into the storm. Maya stopped, rain plastering her hair to her face. She was exhausted. She was broke. She had every reason to keep walking, to tell herself that someone else would help, that she'd done her good deed for the day by smiling at difficult customers for 8 straight hours. But she couldn't. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby girl, being good isn't about convenience. It's about choice, especially when choosing costs you something." "Sir," Maya called out, approaching carefully. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The man turned, and she saw fear in his eyes. Real, raw fear. His phone was dead. His car wouldn't start, and the storm was getting worse. He looked lost in a way that had nothing to do with geography and everything to do with vulnerability. I I don't know what happened, he said, his voice shaking. The car just died, and my phone. I can't remember my son's number without my phone, and It's okay, Maya said gently, making a decision that would change everything. Come on, let's get you out of this rain. She flagged down a taxi, gave the driver her address and her last $40, money she'd been saving for groceries, and helped the elderly man inside. He introduced himself as Arthur, and during the ride to her modest apartment, he said very little, but his eyes never left her face. Maya's apartment was tiny, barely 300 square feet of worn carpet and second-hand furniture, but it was clean and warm. She made Arthur tea, gave him a blanket, and charged his phone while he sat on her threadbare couch, slowly regaining his composure. I don't have much, Maya said, handing him the steaming mug, but no one should be alone in a storm. Arthur studied her for a long moment, this young woman who'd given him her last dollar, who'd brought a stranger into her home, who'd asked for nothing in return. Why? He finally asked. Why help me? You don't know me. Maya smiled softly. Does that matter? You needed help. That's enough. She'd stayed up with him until his son arrived 2 hours later, making small talk, ensuring he was comfortable, never once making him feel like a burden. When Arthur left, he'd pressed a business card into her hand, which she'd politely pocketed without looking at it. She didn't help people for rewards. She helped them because it was right. That had been yesterday. Now standing in the rain outside Sunny Grill Cafe, jobless and humiliated, Maya wondered if her mother had been wrong. Maybe kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Maybe the world punished people like her. The next morning, Maya woke to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages from former co-workers. Something was happening at the cafe, something big. Despite her humiliation, despite everything, curiosity pulled her back. When she arrived, there were 3 corporate vehicles parked outside, and through the window she could see Rick pacing nervously. Then the door opened, and Arthur Bellamy walked in, flanked by 2 assistants in sharp suits, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. "Good morning," Arthur said, his voice carrying quiet authority. "I'm Arthur Bellamy, the new owner of Sunny Grill Cafe and 6 other locations in this chain. I'm here to review recent operational changes." Rick's face went pale, then flushed red as he scrambled forward. "Mr. Bellamy, what an honor, sir. I've been running this location with maximum efficiency, increasing customer turnover, cutting unnecessary costs." "Tell me about your recent staffing decisions," Arthur interrupted, his eyes cold. "I understand you terminated an employee yesterday, a young woman named Maya Johnson." Rick's smile faltered for just a second before reassembling itself. "Ah, yes. Unfortunate situation, but necessary. She was habitually late, unreliable, had a poor attitude with customers. Sometimes you have to make tough calls for the good of the business." "Is that so?" Arthur's voice was dangerously quiet. "Absolutely," Rick said, gaining confidence. "I document everything. Pattern of behavior, customer complaints, the works. Some people just aren't cut out for this industry." From the kitchen, Lena Rodriguez stepped forward, her jaw set with determination. She'd worked at Sunny Grill for 12 years and had never spoken up against management before, but she couldn't stay silent now. "That's not true," Lena said, her voice shaking slightly but growing stronger. "Maya was the best worker we had. She covered shifts when people called in sick, stayed late without overtime, and remembered every regular customer's name and order. She was late one time in 3 years because she was helping someone. Other staff members nodded, murmuring agreement. Mrs. Chen, a regular customer having her morning coffee, stood up. "That girl has a heart of gold," she said firmly. "She's the only reason I come to this cafe. When my husband died last year, she sat with me every morning for a month, just to make sure I wasn't alone." Rick's face darkened. "With all due respect, Mr. Bellamy, I'm the manager here. I make the calls about who stays and who goes, and I stand by my decision." "She gave me her last dollar," Arthur said quietly, and the room fell silent. "2 nights ago, when my car broke down in the storm, when I was frightened and confused, and everyone drove past me, Maya Johnson stopped. She used her tip money to get me a taxi to her home. She gave me tea and warmth and dignity when I had none. She asked for nothing. She expected nothing. That is the kind of person I want leading this establishment." Rick's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Maya Johnson is hereby reinstated as assistant manager, effective immediately," Arthur continued. "Rick Dawson, you are demoted to line cook. Additionally, I'm assigning Jared Cole, a corporate investigator, to monitor operations here for the foreseeable future. Integrity matters in my businesses, and I intend to ensure we have it." Maya stood near the entrance, tears streaming down her face again. But this time, they were different. These were tears of vindication, of overwhelming relief, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. Rick's face contorted with barely contained rage as he watched Maya accept the position, watched staff congratulate her, watched his power evaporate. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he muttered under his breath, but Jared Cole caught the words and made a mental note. Over the following weeks, Maya transformed Sunny Grill Cafe. She introduced community initiatives, free coffee for seniors, a donation jar for local food banks, a new menu featuring recipes from staff members' various cultural backgrounds. Customer satisfaction soared. Revenue increased. The cafe became a neighborhood hub rather than just another restaurant. But Rick Dawson seethed. Working the line, taking orders from Maya, watching her succeed where he'd failed, it was unbearable. He started small, burning orders, accidentally showing up late, spreading whispers that Maya was sleeping her way to the top. When those tactics failed, he escalated. Late one evening, Maya found an anonymous note taped to her locker. "You don't belong here. You never will." She sat alone in her office, the note trembling in her hands, and for the first time since her reinstatement, she questioned everything. Maybe Rick was right. Maybe she was in over her head. Maybe she should quit before she failed publicly. Lena found her there, tears threatening to fall. "Don't you dare let him win," Lena said fiercely. "This place needs you. We need you. You're making a difference here, and he can't stand it because he never did." Maya drew a shaky breath and nodded. She wouldn't run. She'd fight with the only weapon she had: kindness, integrity, and relentless hard work. Meanwhile, Jared Cole had indeed been monitoring operations, and Rick's behavior had raised numerous red flags. After consulting with Arthur, Jared installed hidden security cameras throughout the cafe, including in the office and near the register. Rick's desperation reached its peak on a cold Tuesday night. After closing, alone in the cafe, he stole $800 from the register. His hand shook as he counted the bills, but his resolve was firm. He placed the cash in an envelope and slipped it into Maya's desk drawer, then made an anonymous call to corporate, reporting missing funds. "She took everything from me," Rick whispered to himself in the darkness. "Now I'll take everything from her." The next morning, Arthur arrived with 2 police officers. Rick played his role perfectly, shocked, concerned, suggesting they check Maya's office. When they found the envelope, Maya's face went white. I would never, she stammered, looking around at faces that suddenly held doubt. Rick couldn't quite suppress his smirk, but Jared Cole stepped forward, tablet in hand. Wait, before anyone makes accusations, I think you all need to see this. The footage was damning and crystal clear. Rick stealing the money. Rick entering Maya's office. Rick placing the envelope. Rick walking out with a satisfied smile. The police moved swiftly. Rick's protests fell on deaf ears as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "This is a setup," he shouted, all pretense of composure shattered. "She did this. The only setup here was yours," Arthur said coldly. "And it's over." Maya stood trembling as Rick was led away, vindicated but shaken. Arthur pulled her aside privately. "Your character was never in question," he said gently. "But I want to offer you something more. Full manager, partnership stake. Help me build something worth building." "Why me?" Maya asked, her voice small. "You barely know me." Arthur smiled. "I know enough. You helped a stranger when you had nothing to give. That's not common. That's rare. That's invaluable." 6 months later, the newly renovated Stormlight Diner celebrated its grand reopening. Warm lighting replaced harsh fluorescence. Community photos lined the walls. Maya greeted customers with the same genuine warmth she'd always shown. But now she carried herself with quiet confidence. Local news ran a feature on her story. Arthur watched from his favorite corner booth, pride evident in his eyes. Across town, Rick Dawson finished his shift as a dishwasher at another restaurant. During his break, he saw a news segment about Stormlight's success on the break room television. His expression was complex: regret, envy, and perhaps the first stirrings of self-awareness. The next morning, Maya sat in her office, contemplating something that had weighed on her for weeks. Finally, she wrote a check to a job-training nonprofit and included a handwritten note. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I hope you find yours. M." She addressed it in Rick's name and mailed it. That evening, as storm clouds gathered overhead, Maya noticed a young woman standing outside Stormlight, soaked and looking lost. Without hesitation, Maya grabbed an umbrella and stepped outside. "Come inside," she said warmly. "Let's get you warm." The young woman's eyes filled with grateful tears. Thank you. Thank you." Inside Stormlight Diner, light and laughter spilled into the dark street. Arthur raised his coffee cup to Maya across the room. She smiled back, understanding now what her mother had meant all along. Kindness wasn't weakness. It wasn't foolishness. It was strength, and it had power that cruelty could never match. The storm raged outside, but inside there was only warmth, only light, only the kind of goodness that multiplied when shared. Maya had learned that sometimes being good costs you everything, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, it gives you back more than you ever dreamed possible. In a world full of storms, kindness is the light that leads us home. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what you thought of Maya's story. Did her journey inspire you? Have you ever experienced a moment where kindness changed everything? Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button. We read every single comment, and your stories mean the world to us.